We have to relate today how U.S. government affects state government and then local government. Local politics is the essence of U.S. government. If you understand the federal system, you'll understand the state system. If you understand the state system, you'll understand the local system. They're modeled after each other, essentially. In making U.S. government real, we have to relate it to what goes on locally. Our school is set up in a community called Wedgewood. If we Google Wedgewood environmental concerns in Pensacola, Florida, if we Google that, let's see what we come up with. The oldest one seen just right offhand is October 31st, 2015, an article that was in the Pensacola News Journal. But this is still a current event because this still affects things that go on today. And this affects government. People have to be active participants in government to be able to get their politicians to do and not do things. Your politicians are elected to be representatives of you, the citizen. So if the citizens who make up the community aren't being represented properly, you have to vote that politician out to be able to vote someone in who will represent your interests. And that is why it is essential to vote. If we look at this article from 2015, it says Wedgewood, victim of environmental racism. So just going through, one person says that for anyone who shrugs off the environmental concerns at Wedgewood or anywhere that has environmental concerns and says that it's a them problem, you have to realize that our groundwater is all connected through different creeks. What happens on the landfill infiltrates into the water and it pops up in the nearest creek. And once it pops up in the nearest creek, it makes its way to the bay. It's affecting many things. So in the creeks, that's fresh water. It affects the wildlife. Things that grow, that need fresh water to grow. If that water's contaminated, things that grow will be contaminated when they grow if they have the opportunity to grow. What if they don't have the opportunity to grow because they're contaminated from the start? We think of environmental concerns as only affecting things within the environment, but we don't consider that people are things within the environment that the environment affects. Landfills, where we're putting all our trash and garbage and things that we don't want or need, if we're putting all of that into one area, and that area is in the middle of a community that's already economically disadvantaged, it rains and that water seeps into the ground and goes into our drinking supply, and we consume that, we become a product of our environment. We ourselves become contaminated. We ourselves become unhealthy, and we develop all these other issues that the government, who is supposed to protect us from allowing these types of things to happen, because this is a human rights concern, that made it real for us, because Wedgewood is literally where our school sits. But also you have to look at on a larger scale of things. It's not just here. Flint, Michigan, they've had lead in their water pipes for years. If you drink and consume lead, over time you develop lead poisoning. Your body contains so much metal, you can die. Your blood is toxic because you have consumed so much lead. But that landfill is still contaminated. It may be at a safe level at this moment in time, but that doesn't stop the fact that the environment is not safe. And it is not safe because in certain areas, this would not even be an issue because a landfill would have never been put there. Because this is a certain class of people who have always been disenfranchised by laws and by unjust zoning ordinances or whatever the case may be, because federal government has allowed state governments to allow local governments to cause this type of environmental discrimination and economic discrimination. And it's not exclusive to just black people or white people, because the environment is where all people live. If we have those good policies in place, we can slow down and hopefully prevent environmental hazards from even occurring. We can peacefully assemble to protest the government. The government is allowing contaminated environments. We can protest that. So let's assemble peacefully, because we have a right to under the First Amendment. And we are going to also assert our First Amendment right to protest this injustice. How can you live life without water? Your body is 75% water. Earth is 75% water. Yet we are not protecting the source of life, which is water, which is an environmental concern. We build that voice, we build that power from a local level. Let's also advocate for every city in this nation and everywhere in the world that does not have clean water. Let's be those people who can make that difference in future generations.
Then we'd be number one.
If everyone had clean water from us, he says, then we would definitely be number one. The government, who I pay to have running and clean water in my house, is now forcing me, because they're not cleaning the water, they're now forcing me to go to this private company to buy bottled water. Bottled water costs a lot. The cost of bottling water, it's not the water that costs. It's the plastic. You gotta create a label, you gotta create the bottle, you gotta create a cap, you gotta create a seal for the cap to make sure it's not tampered with or broken. You gotta print on that. So they charge you for all of that. And then they gotta make a profit, so they're gonna charge you a little more. So the government is literally forcing you to go to a private company to get clean water that they said they would supply to you. But maybe I've said too much. Maybe I'm not supposed to discuss this thing, but that is literally United States government in action. The Constitution you swore to uphold as a politician, to levy taxes and to create laws and to do in the general welfare of the public. But the general welfare of the public has been compromised when policies and laws have been allowed that infringe on the environmental rights of people. It affects everybody in that environment. And if we are silent, we're no better than the people who are allowing the injustice.